Hello everyone and welcome to this new video. Today we will talk about a case that has deeply shaken Italy, a tragedy that forces us to reflect on delicate and urgent issues. I am talking about the murder of Giulia Cecchettin, a young woman whose life was shattered. In addition to telling you the facts, I want to focus on the psychological aspects of this story, on Giulia's profile and that of her murderer, exploring the dynamics of their relationship, and finally taking stock of the latest developments in the case. Before starting, if you are new here, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so as not to miss the next videos. Giulia Cecchettin was a young woman, intelligent and ambitious, who was making her way in the world. She loved spending time with her friends, going out and cultivating her interests, living each day with joy and passion. But behind this serenity, it seems there was a toxic relationship that was deteriorating. Giulia had met her murderer during a period in which she was looking for love and affection, but over time their story had transformed into something dark, in which control and manipulation were increasingly evident. Friends and family say they had noticed signs of concern, changes in Giulia, as if she were living in a situation from which it was difficult to escape. There had been some signs, but perhaps no one could have imagined how tragic the epilogue would be. The love story between Giulia Cecchettin and Filippo begins like many other stories between young people. They meet through mutual friends, and little by little a special understanding is born between them. Giulia, with her sweetness and intelligence, strikes Filippo from the first moment. The two begin to date, sharing passions, dreams, and small daily moments that bring them closer and closer. As time goes by, their relationship becomes more serious. They spend entire evenings together talking, discovering new sides of each other. Filippo appears thoughtful, affectionate, and seems truly in love with Giulia, while she welcomes him into her life with trust and hope for a future together. But as often happens, not everything is as it seems. Beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect love story, signs of tension begin to emerge. Moments of misunderstanding and increasingly frequent silences test their bond. The relationship between Giulia Cecchettin and her boyfriend was anything but serene. Giulia was a bright young woman, passionate about life, and with big plans for the future. But what seemed like a normal love story turned out over time to be a trap made of manipulation, jealousy, and control. Giulia's friends and family had noticed worrying signs. Her boyfriend was possessive, often criticized her, and tried to distance her from the people she cared about. Friends described Giulia as increasingly isolated, while her boyfriend began to show himself to be manipulative. His jealousy was out of control, and the arguments between them became more and more frequent and intense. After a relationship with ups and downs, Giulia decides to end her relationship with Filippo Turetta. Friends described their relationship as increasingly tense and characterized by his growing possessiveness. Giulia, tired of the pressure and constant attempts at control, decides to take a break to figure out what is best for her. But for Turetta, this separation is unacceptable. According to people close to Giulia, Turetta reacts to the breakup with insistent messages, trying to convince her to get back together. He doesn't accept the refusal and begins to bombard her with messages and calls, often using desperate and manipulative tones. Turetta's messages reflect a behavior typical of someone who is unable to let go of control. In many of his messages, Filippo switches from declaring his love and regret to blaming Giulia for their separation. This strategy, known as love bombing and gaslighting, is a clear sign of emotional manipulation. For example, in some messages, Turetta tries to make Giulia feel guilty, insinuating that without her, his life is meaningless and threatening in a veiled way, to take extreme actions if she does not get back with him. This type of language is not only manipulative, but also a sign of a dangerous toxic attachment. As time goes by, Filippo's messages become more and more obsessive. He begins to monitor Giulia's movements, asking where she is, who she is with, and what she is doing. In some messages, he uses a threatening tone, trying to scare Giulia into coming back to him. His words reveal a controlling mindset, in which he cannot conceive of her making independent decisions. Experts point out that this behavior is typical of those who develop an unhealthy bond with their partner, turning love into a form of possession. Turetta no longer sees Giulia as an independent person, but as something that belongs to him, and the idea of losing her leads him to try to dominate her through fear. Over time, Filippo's language becomes increasingly threatening. Not only does he try to intimidate her, but he even makes implicit references to violent or extreme actions. His intention is clear. Filippo wants to instill fear in Giulia, manipulating her so that she feels forced to return to him. In the messages, we can hear phrases like, "Without you, I have nothing left, and I don't care what others think, I know what I have to do." Specialists say that language of this type is a warning sign in toxic relationships. Filippo is trying to isolate Giulia psychologically, using subtle threats and words full of desperation to bend her to his will. Faced with Turetta's escalating behavior, Giulia tries to distance herself and set clear boundaries. She confides in some friends, expressing her concern about Filippo's behavior. However, despite her attempts to distance herself, her ex continues to stalk her with messages and unexpected appearances, demonstrating a total lack of respect for her will. Giulia's friends recall how she was visibly upset, but also determined not to give in to the pressure. She knew that the relationship had become toxic, but Turetta's behavior continued to make her live in constant tension and worry. On November 12, 2023, Giulia suddenly disappears. No one can contact her, and her worried family members begin to fear the worst. The authorities are immediately alerted, and a desperate search begins. Hours turn into days, and every attempt to track her down is met with absolute silence. Family members, friends, and volunteers unite to search for Giulia, hoping that she can be found safe and sound. The media begin to talk about her disappearance, and throughout Italy, anxiety grows over the fate of this young woman. The days that follow are frenetic and full of hope. The police explore every possibility. Searches are carried out in Giulia's usual places. Friends, relatives, and her boyfriend himself are questioned. However, the latter proves evasive and does not fully cooperate with the authorities, raising further suspicions. The community's support is strong, but every day that passes without news about Giulia makes the situation more and more desperate. The prayers, the messages of solidarity, and the anguished faces of the family members highlight how much Giulia was loved. After days of fruitless searches, the news arrives that no one would have ever wanted to hear. Giulia's body is found in an isolated area, hidden in the woods. The identification is painful for the family and marks the tragic epilogue of a life cut short. The discovery of Giulia's body confirms the worst fears and triggers a murder investigation. Now everything is focused on one question: who could have committed such a brutal act? The investigators return to carefully examine every detail of the relationship and every trace that could lead to the culprit. The evidence collected begins to paint a clear picture of the situation. Investigators focus on Giulia's boyfriend, whose jealousy and obsessive control seem to suggest a motive. Traces found at the scene of the discovery, testimonies from friends and relatives, and some disturbing details of his behavior make the suspicion increasingly strong. Criminology experts analyze the suspect's profile and highlight the classic signs of a manipulative personality, which often leads to toxic relational dynamics and, in extreme cases, irreparable violence. The testimony of those who knew Giulia reveals that she herself was afraid to leave him, fearing retaliation. On November 12th, Giulia agrees to meet Filippo and gets in the car with him. From that moment on, the situation becomes increasingly tense. Witnesses tell of a heated argument, perhaps due to jealousy or never-ending resentment. Filippo is driving and Giulia is next to him. It seems like a conversation like many others, but then something dramatic happens. Giulia Cecchettin was found lifeless on November 18, 2023, in a ravine between Lake Barsis and Piancavallo in the province of Pordenone. Her body had numerous stab wounds to the head and neck, as well as defensive wounds on her hands and arms. Her ex-boyfriend, Filippo Turetta, was arrested in Germany on charges of aggravated murder. The investigations have reconstructed the dynamics of the murder in a shocking way, with details that show a premeditated and violent act. The crime scene revealed signs of a fight and extreme violence. Investigators are collecting further evidence and the case is evolving. Preliminary hearings have brought to light elements that could be decisive for the trial. Giulia's family and the Italian public are demanding justice, and media pressure is helping to keep attention high on this tragedy. This story has raised a fundamental reflection on gender violence, on women's safety, and on how urgent it is to act to prevent these episodes. The second hearing of Filippo Turetta's trial was held these days in the Assize Court of Venice, dedicated entirely to the interrogation of the accused. The session lasted almost 6.5 hours, with a half-hour break. As scheduled, however, the debate will take place on November 25th and 26th, to go, after any replies, to December 3rd for the sentence. Filippo answers the judge's questions, stammers, keeps his head down, slips in an "I don't remember" here and there, and never says Giulia's name. When the lawyer Nicodemo Gentile, Elena Cecchettin's lawyer, asks him why he did it, his answer is simple and direct. "I killed her because she didn't want to come back to me." After her tragic death in November 2023, her family transformed their pain into a concrete commitment. Her father, Gino Cecchettin, wrote the book Dear Giulia, What I Learned from My Daughter, published in March 2024. In this text, Gino reflects on the roots of patriarchal culture and the importance of educating respect and authentic love. The proceeds of the book will go to the Giulia Cecchettin Foundation, established to honor Giulia's memory through 3 main initiatives. Training in schools. Professionals such as psychologists, lawyers, and journalists work together to educate young people to recognize and prevent gender-based violence. Support for victims. The foundation works with associations to offer support to women who have suffered violence. Scholarships. Scholarships are awarded to female students in STEM fields, promoting gender equality in scientific disciplines. Through these initiatives, Giulia's memory lives on, contributing to significant cultural and social change. After her tragic death, the University of Padua decided to honor the academic career of Giulia, a biomedical engineering student. Although her young life was cut short, Giulia had shown great commitment and determination in her studies, driven by the desire to contribute to the well-being of others through science. The ceremony was touching and solemn. Giulia's family collected the diploma in her name, a recognition of the dream she was building with science. The rector, in his speech, remembered Giulia as a brilliant and passionate young woman, a symbol of hope and commitment for the new generations. This moment is not only a tribute to Giulia's memory, but also a powerful message against violence. The degree given to her family represents the desire to continue the path she had begun, a commitment towards a better future for all. Giulia Cecchettin's story teaches us how important it is to never underestimate the signs of toxic behavior, and how crucial it is for those close to the victim to intervene, listen, and provide support. What do you think about this story? What are your thoughts on psychological violence and control in relationships? Let me know in the comments. If you found this video interesting, I invite you to like and share it to let as many people as possible know about Giulia's story. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel to continue following this type of content.